Tempo is a brand new investing app available in New Zealand, and we're so excited to be telling you about how it works and how you can use it. So in 2023, Tempo conducted a survey with 1,000 Kiwis, and they found that 27% didn't know where to start when it comes to investing. And that's a lot of people. So the great thing about Tempo is that their goal is to take the guesswork out of investing. So when you sign up, they ask questions like, how do you feel about the idea of your investments going up and down? Because some do more than others. You tell them how much you want to save, and they recommend a mix of their funds for you. It's guided investing. So you're getting investment advice from the experts, which is very, very cool. And because they track your goal progress so they can see actually how you're going, they can also recommend that you change your investments and the mix of how you've invested over time, which is really great. So if you would like to try Tempo, you can get a $10 kickstart into your account. And if you would like to learn more about Tempo, you can head to the link in the podcast show notes. Today in the Curve Weekly, we have a very special guest who is someone from the Curve community who applied to be Vic's replacement. So Vic is currently in Japan on holiday. And you know what? We're very happy for her. The only problem with that is talking on a podcast by yourself is incredibly boring. And also, I'm not really the research girl. That's all Vic. So this last week, we've been trying to find a replacement for Vic. And I did a bunch of interviews. I spoke to heaps of different people. And I found this amazing woman who's based in Auckland. Her name is Rachel Somerville. She's 33. She's just had a baby. The baby's 4 months old. And she's just super passionate about financial literacy and understanding the markets. She actually works at KiwiBank as a marketer, but she was awesome. And she did heaps of research for this episode. So at the start, I'm going to introduce you to her so that you can get to know a little bit about who she is and her background. And then we actually talk a little bit about pregnancy and trying to sort of navigate that within the workforce. So I just want to let you know there is a trigger warning here for miscarriages. If that's something you don't feel comfortable listening to, we're going to put a little note in the podcast show notes so that you know where you can skip to get to the bit when we start talking about the financial news and what's been going on in the market, because there has been a lot. I just wanted to say thank you for everyone who did actually apply to be a co-host with me on the podcast. There was so many amazing people that applied, and it just made me think, do we need to start millions of podcasts? Like people that are super talented, sound brilliant on a podcast, like they sent voice notes in, it was a whole thing. So thank you to everyone that got in touch, and thank you so much to Rachel for being on this podcast. So here is the Curve Weekly. If you want to skip to when we start talking about the financial news and what's been going on, then we'll put that time code in the podcast show notes. Enjoy. Rachel, thank you so much for being here. I mean, this is kind of, I think, the first time we've ever properly, oh no, actually I was away once last year and we got someone to fill in for me, but I think I'm easier to fill in for than Vic, you know, because like the research piece of the Curve Weekly is, it's not easy to be on top of what's going on in the news.
I can't pretend that I will be anywhere as expert as Vic. She is completely irreplaceable.
She is irreplaceable, isn't she?
Yeah. And I'm not even a financial expert, but I guess I'd say business more so based on my experience, less so financial specifically. But I think what is really cool about, you know, having followed the curve for a number of years, done your course, is that the way that knowledge has been democratized and access to it is that now, yeah, I can come on and speak to the markets because I kind of know what I'm talking about from all the learning that I've been doing over the last few years. And that's like in part to the work that you guys have been doing.
That's just awesome and so true.
Yeah.
And actually, if I wasn't so lazy, I could have done the research for this.
You totally could. You totally could.
But I was just like, oh gosh, I can't. I know how much time it is to sift through all of the news outlets and to like and to digest it and then present it and tell, you know, an audience or a group of people in a succinct way. It's definitely an art. But before we get into the research and we get into what's been going on, I'd love to just introduce who you are and give a bit of context as to when you just mentioned, you know, you're in a different life stage at the moment.
Yeah.
So
I am currently on parental leave. I've got a 4-month-old baby girl, which has been the hardest and the best time of my life to date. It's been an incredible experience, I think, a very humbling experience, I think, having a child. I was really fortunate to obviously be in this position. You know, there's so many people that aren't able to be in it. It wasn't a smooth road for me like it is for so many women. So
do you mean getting pregnant?
So yeah, I suffered a miscarriage for my first pregnancy. So, you know, like so many other women, super devastating, but, you know, really kind of brings to the forefront, you know, that you really want something. And
well, that's the thing, right? And actually someone in the weekend was saying to me that they went through a miscarriage and it made them realize they actually didn't want to be a mum, you know? And it's like, you don't know really what you want until you realize it's not an option. And I think particularly with motherhood, we spend our whole teenage and early 20s and 30s trying not to get pregnant. And then all of a sudden the idea of, oh shit, maybe I can't.
Yeah.
That would be really devastating. And
totally.
It's such a hard thing to try and wrap your head around. And fertility issues are so common now.
So common.
And how has it been transitioning from, because, you know, we haven't given any context before what life was like before you had your daughter, but you've got an incredibly successful career. And I mean, you managed a team of like 20 people at KiwiBank. You've had, you know, up until this point, you've had a lot of career success, you know. How has the transition been for your brain going from that to caring for a tiny human?
So wild, honestly. I think when I first went on parental leave, it was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Like I wake up, you know, I go for a walk. This is before my daughter was born. And then, she was really late. So I had like all this extra time that I did not want. And people say like, oh, this is like great extra me time. And it's like when you're that pregnant and they're uncomfortable and you're using your parental leave and they haven't arrived, not ideal. And then at the beginning, you're like so tired, so overwhelmed. But I have definitely struggled with the lack of mental stimulation. And I think what was amazing about like this opportunity that popped up was like the last couple of days I've been like, oh, old Rach is back, you know? And I think the other thing is I spent 13 years to date like hustling to build my career. And it's a really weird thing to be like, okay, I'll see you guys in like 9 months to a year and step away when you've put in so much work. It does fester a little bit of like insecurity and self-doubt of like, oh my gosh, what if, you know, I go back and things are really different or they no longer need me or, you know, whatever it may be.
Or I can't keep up because I've missed out on a year of conversations.
Exactly.
And one of the things that I spoke about we did like a tiny little quick episode last week.
Yes.
Well, one in particular woman emailed in saying that she basically was coming back from London.
Yeah.
She'd done her big OE. She had really built her career up overseas and then she was coming back with her partner and found out she was pregnant. And we've had so many messages from people because, and it's so one of those things, unless you've been pregnant or thinking about getting pregnant, you've never had to think about what the implications of telling your work would be.
Yeah.
Did you have have you got any experience or thoughts on that, especially as a manager, right? Because you manage 20 people.
Yeah. So I think in terms of workplace and how that all flows around, so I work in marketing. So currently at KiwiBank, I have been surrounded by pregnant women like my entire career. Like at one stage I had 4 managers in 2 years go on parental leave. It was insane. And as a manager, like it is a challenge for sure. Like you don't want, you know, your best staff to be heading away for an extended period of time, having to replace them, all that kind of stuff. But equally, it's like just the price of doing business and the people that are in those roles, in those positions are often like really high performers. You want to do what's best by them.
Well, it's also, I guess it's the idea of like, for a lot of people, it might be their first, let's just say.
Yes.
I think for this particular listener, because she doesn't have a job yet, that's so scary because you don't have the history of being good at your job or someone wanting to do right by you. You still are trying to prove yourself. And I think that is really tricky. I'd never thought about that. No. But also, you want to be in a company that's going to help support you while you have a baby. So it's like there's not a lot of those companies around.
And there's actually quite a lot of implications if you're not employed. So I'm not an HR expert. I'm sure there'll be some in your community that can advise on this better. But the first thing is an employer cannot discriminate against you for being pregnant legally. So if you're going through the recruitment process and you do disclose it, they would have to have a pretty robust, you know, hiring process to make sure that the reason you didn't get the job is because you weren't the best candidate, not because of information you disclosed. If you take the other approaches of waiting till you've had the offer or you're new in the business, that to me feels completely kind of justified too, because I think the business gets a lot from you regardless. Like you're pregnant for a really, really long time. So if you come into a business and, you know, the first week you arrive, you have to have a really awkward conversation with your manager, like super uncomfortable. No one really necessarily wants to be in that position. But I think what could potentially help is flipping the narrative on it and being like, okay, so this woman's clearly the best candidate for the job. That's why she got the job. She'll be in the role for at least 6 months or, you know, however long she has to go. She'll probably come back to the role. So you're retaining good staff. And then on top of that, if you treat someone really well through this process, then they'll have really good loyalty towards you as a business. And
so
the
true.
cost of hiring new people in terms of recruitment, getting them onboarded, getting them upskilled is so high that, like, in my mind, I would do anything to get the best people into my team, even if that meant kind of navigating around various aspects of it.
So you think it's totally valid to not say you're pregnant in the hiring process, and that you shouldn't have to wait until 3 months before you go to disclose. You should be able to say it without penalties or being treated badly in the time that you're there while pregnant.
Ideally, yes. And I think it would be really probably up to the vibe of the hiring manager and like what the vibe you kind of get from the organization. Like I was really fortunate. So I got promoted while I was pregnant at KiwiBank. I was very open about being pregnant. You know, my leaders knew that I had a miscarriage. So I was clearly trying to get pregnant. It was never even really a thing. Like I kept it really separate. So I was like, yay, exciting, I'm pregnant. And then I applied for this role and I didn't mention throughout the hiring process that I was pregnant because it wasn't relevant to whether or not I was the best candidate for that job. And the only time it came out was at the very end when I was having a conversation with my boss around handover and stuff like that. He was just like, so, you know, let us know if there's any extra flexibility that you'll need. And like, awesome. So awesome.
God, that's
so
good.
lucky. And obviously I had a number of years of trust and rapport and things built up. But like for me, becoming a mum, being pregnant has nothing to do with whether or not you're the best person for a job. But it is incredibly challenging and there is still such a long way to go in terms of making sure that that isn't seen in a negative light. Yeah.
Okay, let's get into the markets. Let's get into what's been happening in the world. So, I mean, the one massive, if you've been living under, I don't know, I was about to say a rock, but what's something even bigger than a rock? I don't know.
Iceberg?
If you've been living under an iceberg, then you may have missed this.
Yeah.
But the markets are not having a stunning time, are they?
No, they are not. So, Monday of last week was the S&P 500's worst day since 2022.
Shit, was it?
Yeah.
Whoa, that's bad.
Yes. So it had over a 10.1% from its peak, which was only 3 weeks earlier in February.
Whoa. So 3 weeks before that, it was at a peak.
All-time high.
Oh, my God.
And then it's gone, zoom, like, absolutely tanked essentially. And so this is called what they call a market correction. And this drop is worth like $5 trillion US.
$5 trillion.
Yeah.
It almost sounds like fake money because you just can't even adjust it. Like you have no idea what even a trillion is, let alone five.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's too many companies to really list out that are down, but like all of the Magic 7, all of the big kind of companies are reporting a decrease in their share price. And it's pretty crazy time. It has bounced back a little bit. So Friday we saw a slight bounce back, but it's still the worst week since early 2023.
And so this is a like market-wide fall. This isn't tech companies seeing a fall. This isn't, I don't know. This is a really across the board, all companies have had a real shocker.
Yeah, there are outliers, but by and large, like the market's just completely rattled.
So can we talk about correction for anyone that doesn't understand what that means?
Yeah.
What actually do you mean by a market correction?
So a market correction is defined as a drop between 10 and 20%, but for like a short period of time. And when it goes longer and deeper, so like 20% plus, then it becomes what they call a bear market. And that's when it heads into kind of recessionary type territory.
And so bear market, for anyone that doesn't know, I think this is what Vic always explains.
Yeah.
Well, because you can have a bear market or a bull market.
Yes.
And a bear, if you imagine when they attack, they go down on their prey. So it's like the idea of a bear market is like tanking downward, essentially. A bull goes down and up. So that's kind of the way to think about it when you hear bull or bear market, which I think is good to remember because otherwise you're just like, why are they using animal acronyms?
Exactly. And I think it's worth noting, it sounds super, super scary, but these corrections happen pretty regularly. So the last one happened, I think, about 11 months ago. And since the stock market reported on things from since I think it was 1929, there have been over 50 market corrections.
Okay.
So it's not all as kind of scary as the headlines are necessarily making out yet. It's if it is one of the corrections that then moves into a bear market state that will get things kind of more worrying.
So okay, so let me just repeat this back to you. So the idea of market corrections, they happen all the time.
All the time.
Heaps of them
it's
have
just
happened.
like the peaks and troughs, yeah.
And it's almost like a quick little panic in the stock market, and then it sort of rebalances. It's like, am I going to fall? Am I going to fall? I'm losing my balance. No, I've managed to like stand on my 2 feet again.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're heading into a bear market, a correction sometimes can turn into like, no, actually we're here to stay. This is not going to be good for the next little while.
So that's happened about 20, I think it's 22 times over the last almost 100 years. So it's not a no, but it's kind of one to watch. But I guess, again, this reiterates what Vic always says around dollar cost averaging, not trying to time the market, continuing on, is that if you're an investor and you take a diversified long approach, then you should be in with a grin.
Yeah, and I think that's such a great point, because I actually weirdly feel excited about a market correction or a dip, because I am not scared that, maybe even if it's for 3 years, the market's down, I'm kind of like, fine, I'm investing for a long period of time anyway. And I think that's something that we've spoken about, honestly, till the cows come home, haven't we?
We'll keep on,
And we will keep on hammering that home, because for anyone that is new to investing, or maybe not super, super clued up yet and trying to, it might feel scary that this has happened, but it's been ages since one.
Yeah.
It's just part of investing.
Yeah, exactly.
Stuff happens in the world, the market reacts. I think that's the thing that's made sense to me with the Curve Weekly podcast, is when you start to understand the things that are happening in the world, you then understand how it's impacting the market. Like, it's such an obvious correlation. Like,
totally.
There's so much happening in the world right now, particularly with Trump in power.
Exactly.
That, of course, this is happening.
Chaos. Yeah.
Yeah, it's chaos.
Exactly. So, speaking of Trump and why this has all happened, so the main drivers of why there's been this market wobble is, so the steel and aluminum tariffs have come into effect.
I kind of love aluminum.
Aluminum, I know. It does sound. It sounds a lot less clunky, doesn't it? And then you overlay a like Kiwi bogan accent, and it's like aluminium. But
so Dunedin.
So Dunedin. Yeah, I'm a southern gal. It's like hard to get and not be so a bit rough around the edges. But so that's the main driver. So that's come into effect, and that impacts markets all around New Zealand. All around the world. Sorry.
But sorry, what has come in with aluminum and steel? What is that?
So Trump has put tariffs on all steel and aluminum being imported into the US.
Okay.
With the ideal being that he wants US made steel and aluminum it's used in like a whole bunch of manufacturing stuff, obviously like cars, whole shebang. But the challenge is, so with steel, they import about 25%, and aluminium, I'm going to say aluminum the whole time.
Let's just go with aluminum.
Aluminum, they import about 50% of their needs for production.
How gutted would you be if you're an aluminum business that you're importing? You're all of a sudden like, oh, cheers, Trump. Now our business is totally...
Super, super scary. And you can see that businesses will be kind of, very conservative with making moves right now because of that, probably.
Yeah, and it's also just, for a long time, the world has profited off the US economy, and the US economy has kind of bolstered up the rest of the world, but particularly with investing,
100%.
because most of us invest in the S&P 500 or in US based companies. The fact that Trump is like, nah, actually this is ours, like get off it, is sort of how it feels. It feels like all of a sudden he's trying to cut off America from the rest of the world, which means, and we obviously don't know how this is necessarily going to play out, but it's a weird feeling.
It's super weird, and it's really polarizing compared to his initial term. So he was like buddied up to the stock market. He saw that as an indicator of kind of buoyancy of his economy. Now he just doesn't seem to give a shit, because the other main driver that really rattled investors is that he said that his policies may be recessionary. They may cause a recession. So that is the biggest driver. So the tariffs coming into effect, and then the fact that he's like, my policies might cause a recession, and just doesn't seem to care.
What the just actual hell?
Honestly, wild. Like, it's just bamboozling. Like, get whiplash looking at all the different stuff, trying to be like, but what's going on?
Haven't all of the people that voted for him because they want to see America great again and profiting? And then he's all of a sudden saying, kidding, there's going to be a recession. Like, what does he have to say about that?
Like, every day he says something different.
Yeah, it's
so
so
who
hard
honestly
to keep
knows?
up.
But it's American consumers probably didn't realize the impact that these tariffs would have on their like day-to-day goods, because not only is steel and aluminum a real issue, the other really interesting area of tariffs, which I did a lot of research on, was alcohol.
I've heard this.
So Mexico obviously produced tequila, can only be made in Mexico. And the US.
God bless Mexico.
God bless Mexico. Stunning country, delicious food, delicious drinks. And the US imports 80% of all tequila production. And what I found that was quite funny is that celebrity tequila brands are even more impacted than the other ones that are owned by the big guns like Diageo and things like that, because they are less likely to have sophisticated supply chains, less likely to have the kind of the backing of all these big companies to kind of keep them and negotiate deals and things to kind of keep the prices stable. So, Kendall Jenner, The Rock, Matthew McConaughey, there's all these celebrities that have these tequila companies.
George
Clooney, I think he
Casamigo.
sold. Did he sell? I feel like he sold his for a shitload of money
idea.
at some point. But yeah, so this big trend, they're going to be really hitting the pocket.
I imagine a lot of those are not Trump supporters, so they'll be even more annoyed.
Well, yes.
Well, I mean, I guess you never know, do you?
Exactly. But what they are doing to combat it is, so there was a 35% increase in imports of tequila to America in January. So because it's a long life product, like it doesn't go off very quickly, they're clearly like getting it in before the tariffs come into effect. And then the CEO of Calabasas Beverages, which is the name of Kendall Jenner's liquor company, so on point, Calabasas. I was like, this is just too much. Yeah, he was saying they're stockpiling.
Wait, what's it called?
Calabasas Beverages, which is like so if you watch the Kardashians, Calabasas is like the fancy suburb that they live in.
Okay.
It's like Southern California. So it's just like all very like SoCal. But and he was saying that A, they're stockpiling, and then B, they're also unfortunately pulling back on hiring people, pulling back on innovation. And so that's like what we'll continue to see, which is like super disappointing.
God, and also you would only have so much to import. Like, it takes a while to make tequila and things like that. So, I mean, while they can batch import before tariffs come in, that's not a long-term solution.
Yeah. And inevitably they pass on the cost to the consumer and they're the ones that suffer. So.
Oh, God, and it's already expensive.
Exactly. So, yeah, not a good time. The other key really interesting thing about the alcohol tariffs that have come into effect. So this kind of needs to be sequenced out because it's a bit of like tit for tat. So Trump puts tariffs on the steel and aluminum from Europe. And then in retaliation, they say, okay, American whiskey, so bourbon. So you know how champagne can only be made in France?
Yeah.
Bourbon can only be made in America.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't either.
Oh, wow.
Super interesting. So wouldn't be my drink of choice.
No, neither. I actually hate bourbon.
Yeah, it reminds me of like teenage years, Cody's.
Same.
Like
Ooh,
8%.
Oh my God, Cody's.
But yeah, so they have a 50, so they retaliated by saying we're going to put 50% tariff on bourbon American whiskey. And then Trump has turned around and said, well, like stuff you, we're going to put 200%, it was threatening to, it's not confirmed, 200% tariff on alcohol coming in from Europe. Which is just insane. But what is really, so the stocks, so Heineken, European-based liquor companies took a little bit of a hit with that news. What is really interesting, so Vic last week was talking about Louis Vuitton, Moet Hennessy, and the shifts in the luxury side of the business. They obviously have the liquor side of the business, which I think is worth about $6 billion US annually. Obviously it has Moet, Verve, all of these amazing liquor brands.
And because the liquor brands have been struggling, haven't they? Particularly champagne.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's the added overlay that Bernard Arnault, big dog, spoken about a lot on the pod.
So for anyone that doesn't know this, Bernard?
Bernard?
Oh, I think that's his name.
Arnault, yeah.
Bernard old something anyway.
Yeah.
He's like the richest man in the world and he owns LVMH. So he owns essentially all of these brands that are owned by Louis Vuitton, Moet Hennessy.
Which is heaps of luxury brands, heaps of other brands, etc. So he has had a long-standing relationship with Trump since like the 80s. Yeah.
Really?
And he was at his inauguration, like sitting with the other billionaire boys of like Elon Musk.
Oh, the billionaire boys club. Sorry, I just dropped my microphone.
Jeff Bezos. Exactly. So it'll
He'll
be really
annoyed.
Surely you'll be picking up the phone and being like, bro,
Mate.
Did you think about your threat that it would impact me and like all of that dynamic? So it'll be so interesting to see if they follow through in the threat or if like there is enough Because clearly in his administration, individuals have a lot of power. So,
but I can't imagine how annoyed you'd be if your BFF is essentially wiping out a shit ton of your own personal money. You'd be like, can you not?
yeah.
But even the fact that they have pulling power just as billionaires and mates over an entire world's economy is
scary.
So bizarre.
It is.
Because if you think about the types of, I mean, I don't know what Bernard's like, but I don't know what any of those men are like. Obviously, I've made some serious judgments over my time, but I don't know. I mean, who knows what they're like? The point is there's a tiny, small amount of incredibly wealthy people that are able to control the literally global trades.
Yeah.
Based on their own personal vested interest on making money through their business. It's bizarre. Like Trump going out and saying that he's buying a Tesla.
Yeah.
Are you joking? Like, go away. Just because Tesla's absolutely tanking it, you've decided, oh God, I could just go on about this.
I know.
Ages.
It's really
so
overwhelming.
annoying.
Yeah. But there's also some good and interesting news coming out at the moment as well.
Okay, please.
So
give me something positive.
Yeah, so let's take a wee breather from tariffs. They are like, it's one of those things where I'm really sick of talking about Trump and tariffs and all the stuff, but like it's just unavoidable. Like we would just be not up with the play unless we didn't cover it in detail.
I wonder if we could rename them because even just the word tariffs is sounding to you.
And I can't spell it.
No.
There's like 2 R's, the 2 F's, the 1 R. Like,
it is confusing, isn't it? Maybe we call them baby teas or something.
Baby teas. Someone will see like a snippet of this podcast and they'll be like, who's this chick that says Aluminium and like baby tea? Like what were they thinking getting her to fill in for Vic? So Pepsi, obviously they have Pepsi, a whole bunch of other beverage brands. They also have snacks.
Do they?
Yeah. So in the UK, they own Walkers, crisps.
Walkers. Oh my God, I think I love these.
Yeah, they're like they're a pretty popular chip. They also have Doritos.
Oh, yeah.
And in New Zealand, they have Bluebird. And in amongst other brands, but just so everyone kind of.
So basically, they've got a lot of
they
different.
have heaps of stuff.
Yeah.
Like
cool.
all those big companies like Unilever or Procter & Gamble, they have like lots and lots of different brands. So they, it's been widely reported that they're in late stage talks to acquire this company called Poppi. So I hadn't heard of it mostly because it's predominantly in the US, but it's a really, really, really cool company. And Pepsi is in talks to buy it, apparently late stages, for over $1.5 billion US.
Shit, that's a lot. I actually really like their branding. I'm just
stunning.
Jumped on their website.
Stunning. Yeah. So
cool.
It's really cool.
Oh, I like the look of this. It feels fun. It feels fruity. It feels young. It feels cool.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So they have only been around since 2018.
Whoa, they're super new.
Yeah. They got their big break on Shark Tank. So the American version of Dragon's Den.
Got it.
And literally like a husband and wife duo who were like, we want to create drinks that are kind of better for you than what we currently have out there.
Oh my God, she went on Shark Tank 9 months pregnant.
Yes, also with her second child, like absolutely insane. And what they've managed to do was with my marketing hat on, they have had like a laser focus on their branding. As you said, it's like super cute, super fun. It articulates what they're trying to sell really, really clearly. They jumped on trends really quickly. So they were in early TikTok. They sold via Amazon and they launched during the pandemic. And so all of these things have come together to really craft this beautiful brand story and set of products.
I'm looking at it now. It's like it says mixing fruit juices with apple cider vinegar, prebiotics and sparkling water. I mean, the idea of functional drinks and things that are better for you is so genius.
Exactly. So functional drinks is becoming this really massive category within drinks. And what they mean by functional is some added health benefit. So it's no longer the kind of the taking away stevia vibes. It's, okay, what can we add into drinks to make them better for you or have more function?
Well, it's kind of stemmed from originally kombucha, right?
Kombucha classed as a functional drink. It has probiotics of kombucha.
Totally.
There's the prebiotic of Poppi,
kimchi
which I think they add fiber to it for like gut health.
Well, I mean, like even in the weekend, I bought a kefir drink.
Stunning.
It's stuff like that. It's kefir. It's like adaptogens. It's all sorts of stuff that are essentially, they're trying to commoditize health, but in the drink industry, essentially, which is so genius because they've done it with vitamins and supplements. They've done it with like, the food industry massively, but drinks has kind of remained untouched for a while. So this feels yeah, it makes so much sense. All of a sudden I'm like, this is actually a genius investing idea.
Yeah.
In terms of like the future of drinks is probably less alcohol
100%.
and like maybe just less stuff that's bad for you. Like maybe even coffee will end up being replaced with things like matcha or other functional, like basically like just everyone's trying to optimize their health.
100%. Yeah, and I think it's really interesting that like a big corporate like Pepsi is saying we're putting like billions of dollars of like betting that this is the thing. And what's really interesting, it'll be seeing how this play out, seeing more products come to market. In New Zealand, we see some really cool startups like Moody have created a prebiotic soda that's just gone to market. There's obviously like No Ugly and Arepa and all of these functional drinks.
So true, Arepa, that's such a good point.
Yeah, so you're seeing it kind of all come to fruition, and it's off the back of the fact that, people drink less than they used to. They don't want to put necessarily as much shit in their bodies.
Yeah.
And it's very exciting to watch. And the good thing about if this acquisition goes ahead is that if you invest in the S&P 500, Pepsi is an S&P 500 company, you're also investing in
Poppi.
And Poppi potentially if this goes ahead.
I really love this, and I think it's such a good example of seeing a trend early on, because this is something we could even talk about in the investing club, like what other companies either are public or are close to being public, and how can we benefit from this? Because I reckon it's going to be huge for someone like myself who is definitely health conscious. Like and also I don't drink a lot, but I also feel so boring when I'm not having a drink. Like I want to still enjoy a drink with friends, but I don't like waking up feeling like total ass the next day.
Yeah. And this, like when I was pregnant, this became really apparent as well, is that the market is getting so much better in terms of non-alcoholic alternatives, whether it be 0% beer, like at the F1 on the weekend, bandwagon F1.
What's the F1?
A Formula One watcher. The main sponsor on the track is Heineken Zero.
Really?
So it's like you can see all the companies around the world are starting to be like, okay, actually we have to adapt or otherwise we're going to get left behind.
Yeah.
And so it's super, super interesting. And like when I was going out, I didn't want to have a sugary Coke or a juice. Like I want something that makes me feel like I'm still part of the crew, enjoying the ritual of having a beverage, but it not being something that's going to make me feel really average.
I love this. I think this is such a cool story.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful brand. Like they've done such a good architecture around it. So from a marketing perspective, just fizzing.
Yeah, love this.
Literally fizzing.
We are fizzing. One of the things I wanted to speak about, and I don't know if this is something you're open to, but Tesla for me has been, this is something we've again spoken about in the club, and I'm still unsure as to like how I feel about it, but I'd love to do a quick update on what we saw in the last few weeks, because this is one that's been hit hard, and it's also someone that's in bed with Trump. So it's kind of weird to think, some of these massive billionaires that have been by his side are now looking at their companies absolutely going down and down and down.
Yeah. So Tesla took the biggest hit essentially of the week. So in 2025,
I'm just imagining like Tesla being hit in the face with like a wet fish or something.
Does Elon Musk do? Oh no, that was Zuckerberg who was like saying he was going to do a fight or whatever. So Tesla stocks are down 36% in 2025 alone, and 15% in the last week.
That's
so they have
huge.
Crazy. Like, so they have lost. So they went massively up when Trump got into power because of the buddy nature of Elon and Trump.
Yeah.
And then have just absolutely lost any gain that they had.
And it's so interesting because people that like the market follows what people think is going to happen, right? Yeah. So originally people thought, okay, so Elon Musk and Donald Trump are mates, which means Donald Trump is going to put stuff in place that's going to benefit Tesla.
Yeah.
But not only, like my take on this is not only is Tesla being hit in the face like a wet fish, with a wet fish, because everyone is just revolted with his being in like a friendship with Trump. But then on top of that, all of the sort of like, I guess, investor sentiment or how people are like, there's vandalism, there's like, people are off it.
People getting bumper stickers that say like, I bought this car before Elon like lost his mind and stuff like that. Like if I owned a Tesla, I'd be quite nervous about the resale value if that's something
such a good point.
If that was something that was important to me. And I think it's really, really interesting when you think about it again with my marketing hat on from a branding perspective, and when an individual is so closely related to a brand and a product. So, you know, you and Vic better make sure you don't, you know, do anything too dodgy.
It is true.
Because your personal brands are like intrinsically linked with the curve.
Yeah.
And when it goes wrong, so you saw this with like Kanye West and Yeezy and stuff as well.
Such a good point.
Is that like the ramifications from a reputation perspective are
huge.
Could be huge and damage your business. Like I think in Germany, sales are down 76% in February versus the February before.
76%
versus the year prior.
And like, I think your point around the face of a brand is such a good one, because while it can catapult it in the right direction, it can catapult it in the wrong direction. And
you make some bad moves. Yeah.
And it's a lot of pressure, you know, and even if we thought about the curve, it's true. Like, we're all human. We all make mistakes. Like, there is a very real fear that you could say something and just get totally cancelled, because that's the reality. You have to be so aware of how you're speaking and talking and when I say influencing, I don't mean like influencer. I just mean if you are saying stuff that people are listening to, you have to be aware of how that's going to be interpreted and the impact 100%. That it has. And so while that can be a really good thing, what we've seen with Elon is that it can be a really good thing for a while, and people see him as this innovation king who just like sees the writing on the wall before it happens and blah, blah, blah. But everyone's just off it. No one wants to be associated with the brand because of him as a person and what he represents. An individual, It's just like quite fascinating to watch it all unfold.
It's super fascinating. Like the stock, you know, taking the long-term view, we're going to try and keep Vic proud, is still up 500% over the last 5 years. So it's not all doom and gloom in that mind. But I guess if you're thinking about it moving forward, do we think it's going to rebound, or is it kind of an end of an era?
What do you think?
I have never personally been a big Tesla fan, but I don't feel like I'm the target audience for it. So I think historically it's kind of been quite progressive, like Silicon Valley vibe, people that drive Teslas. And if you think about what Elon's doing cozying up to Trump, he's alienated that entire group of consumers. True. And then you overlay the fact that there's less incentives for green ventures. So people aren't getting, you know, their rebates on green cars, and there's so much competition.
Why is that? What's the green rebate thing?
So in lots of countries, there is incentives for people to buy electric vehicles.
Is there not anymore?
And a lot of them have been wound back.
Really?
Yeah. So in New Zealand, when the government changed over, the green incentives to buy electric cars got wound back.
I hate that.
There was like a stimulation of demand due to kind of discounting of price, and now that's been removed. And then you also add, and I think you guys talked on this about this company a few weeks ago, BYD.
Yes,
so much more competition. So yeah, for me, I'm personally not the biggest Tesla fan. Obviously, it's in the S&P 500, so you're kind of pseudo going along for the ride. What do you think? I know you've always been really passionate about it.
I don't like Elon and anything he stands for. It's so interesting. My perception has changed a lot in the last week. And even speaking to you last night, and we were just chatting about what we would talk about, hearing you say, and I think you said, if I was to buy an electric vehicle, I'd go and get a European car that was just happened to be an EV. I wouldn't go and buy particularly a Tesla, because I don't really, not only do I mean, which I agree with, and I'm the same. If I had the money to invest in an EV, it would not be a Tesla.
No, and like my life stage, it's not super practical with a Labrador and a baby.
No, it's really not.
Yeah.
I mean, but I think it's just like a real masculine brand. If I was to spend that much money on a car, I think I would do a more traditional car brand that happened to be electric.
Me too. But yeah, are we the people that Tesla wants? Long-term, probably yes. Currently, probably no. But they've done a really good job of pissing off their existing customer base.
Yeah, which is super interesting. And I guess also my main takeaway here is I would imagine a lot of Trump supporters are probably not Tesla buyers.
Yeah.
It's almost a double whammy. It's like he's alienated his existing actual customer base.
Yeah, and he's also winding back all of these like climate initiatives and stuff, but then is promoting his mate Elon electric car. Like it's just, again, it's discombobulating.
Discombobulating.
Like, it's just like, you don't know where to look. So like honestly, who knows?
Yeah, I think if I was to invest in Tesla, it would be tiny, tiny bits, and just to see what happens. It's definitely not I want to invest in this company because I want to see it grow. Yeah. I'm more just like, it's doing so badly. Yeah, therefore maybe it's a buying opportunity.
Exactly, potentially.
Let's just do a few quick headlines, things that we've seen that we don't need to go into too much detail on. One of the things that Vic has spoken a lot about is Versace and the luxury space. And I know you wanted to speak about an update that you've seen there. What's been happening?
Yes. So last week, Vic mentioned around a potential takeover of Versace by Prada.
Yes.
Who also own Miu Miu, which is like their star performing brand. And in the last couple of days, Donatella Versace.
Oh, beautiful pronunciation.
Thank you. Try better than Aluminium. She has stood down as the creative director of Versace.
Oh my God, I saw Dua Lipa post about that. So she must have been posting as like, you're an icon, you'll be missed.
Exactly. So she's been the creative director ever since her brother died in, I think, the 90s.
Whoa.
So like 28 years or 27 years or something like that. And she's been replaced with the former design director who finished up in January at Miu Miu.
Right.
So nothing's been confirmed, but solidifying your place as a potential buyer by, planting someone who has had great experience and success at the potential buyer company, super, super interesting.
So hold on, sorry. So Miu Miu.
So Prada is buying Versace. Prada also own Miu Miu.
Yes, and they're putting Miu Miu's creative director into Versace.
Into Versace to replace Donatella.
Oh, that's quite big.
So that feels like another kind of like
tick
to what was talked about last week of maybe it's heading in that direction.
Also, I wonder what will happen with Miu Miu though, because they're the shining star.
Yeah.
And obviously whoever that creative director is knows what the hell they're up to. I wonder who they'll put in there.
Yeah, exactly.
Can we speak about the Euro situation and with everything happening in the world in America, the potential opportunity with Europe and what's going on there?
Yeah, so Germany is at the moment trying to put through legislation to be able to increase their debt, so increase their government spending to spend more on defence for obvious reasons. And what that means generally is more spending indicates, more growth in economies. So when, if you think about the last few years with the pandemic, spending stimulated demand.
Yeah.
So that if that legislation goes through, then it will stimulate spending in Europe, and you saw their markets increase a little bit off the back of that news.
It's quite interesting because I feel like there was some kind of link from World War II and their spend and the reason why they refused to go into debt like they were before.
Interesting.
And this is the first time they've loosened or changed that and increased the amount of debt that they have because they kind of feel like they have to.
Yeah.
So is the idea of this that there could potentially be opportunity within European markets and we might see growth elsewhere other than relying so heavily on the US?
Yeah, and so you're exactly right. So the other part of it is that there's the Germany increasing their spending, and there's also the fact that because the US is such a schmozzle in the markets at the moment, people are looking to other markets naturally.
Do you think there's ever any other podcasts that talk about the markets as a schmozzle?
I don't know, but it's like my favourite word, schmozzle or palaver. One of the two.
Them.
Yeah.
I love them. And I couldn't agree more. They're a total schmozzle.
Yeah. So you're seeing the investors be rattled in the US, look to other markets. And it's widely predicted, and you're kind of seeing the flow of money that Europe is going to be a big benefit of that, as well as kind of Asian markets as well.
I wish that the EU was still attached to the UK.
No.
For that reason. Like how cool would it be if Europe does start flourishing and the UK did too, but it's just like...
Well, the UK will be part of that kind of catchment as well.
I know, I
assume.
just wish we were all still friends.
Yeah, it's rocking, yeah.
And there's one last thing that we were going to touch on, and it's a bit... I have to admit something I did today, which is, I was going to say off-brand, but it's not off-brand at all. So I was listening to the radio with my dad. He listens to ZB in the morning.
Love it.
Which is, for anyone that's not in New Zealand, it's a talk back station where honestly the only people that call up are like 65 plus. So I was in the kitchen and Dad had on ZB in the background. They were talking about KiwiSaver.
Yes.
And whether or not, we should be increasing, the amount people have to put to 4% or if it should be mandatory, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, I was like, I should call in. And my dad was like,
oh my gosh.
You should.
Did you do it?
I called in.
Did you get on?
So I called in. But hold on, mate. So I called in and I...
Going on iHeartRadio right now to listen to the...
So basically I called and then I panicked and I was like, I don't have time for this. I hung up. I had a shower. I started getting ready for my day. And then I had a missed call and I thought, I don't know who that could be. So I called back because it wasn't the number I'd called.
Gotcha.
It turns out it was ZB calling me back.
I'm going to make
They had no idea who it was. So they were obviously just like desperate for callers and were like, we'll call this person back. So anyway, then What happened? I ended up on ZB talking to Kerry, someone, about the importance of KiwiSaver. And I probably spent 15 minutes yabbering away about how
incredible.
It was so, my dad was obviously listening in the kitchen while I was up in my bedroom.
You weren't that person that had the feedback of the radio and this.
No, I didn't. But I was like, had my window open and I was like, you know what, Kerry? Like just really. And then, I opened up the door and Dad was like, I recorded the whole thing. I was like, oh God. But anyway, basically there's some stats that have come out about KiwiSaver, about the disproportionate amount in men's accounts to women. So can we chat about some of that?
Yes. So for the second year in a row, the Retirement Commission has reported that there's a 25% difference between the KiwiSaver balances of men and women. And this is a topic super passionate to my heart. I actually did a talk on it in my workplace last year around why this is.
Did you?
Yes.
Like you stood up and did a
yeah, we got a KiwiSaver provider in. We got some experts from across the business.
Cool.
Because there's a 25% difference in KiwiSaver balances between men and women. So that's been the same over the last 2 years. And there are some obvious and some not so obvious drivers of this. And it's not things that will change overnight, but it's hopefully things that, as a society, we can continue to elevate. So the first one is obviously that there are a lot of women in lower paying jobs than men. So if you think about lots of the care industries and all those kind of things that are unfortunately and undeservedly lower paying.
So true.
They are contributing less just because
they earn less, so they have less to contribute. Because if you're contributing 3% of a $100,000 salary, it's very different to a $25,000 salary.
Exactly. And then there's obviously the issue with pay parity, so that men often earn more than women for the same job. So lower earning jobs potentially also not earning as much for the same jobs. The other thing is obviously they take time out.
God, that's a huge one, isn't it?
Yeah, and then when they re-enter the workforce, may not necessarily re-enter full time.
So there's so a lot of it is to do with the idea that we don't earn as much, not only within the role that we're doing, but we then take time out or we come back part time. So there's a huge chunk of a woman's life where they're just contributing significantly less for many kind of more lifestyle reasons in terms of taking time out for
and then
kids.
Another really interesting reason is that often in a household, some will say, one person can do KiwiSaver. And to me, that is just so scary. Obviously, it's relationship property. So
let's explain that for people who don't know.
So KiwiSaver is determined as relationship property. So unless you have a contract out agreement,
which is like a prenup.
Like a prenup, exactly, a prenup in New Zealand. You guys have a great episode on that.
We actually do, and I've just recorded another one because
awesome.
as I'm about to try and get into the property market, I was like, this is something I need to sort of refresh. But actually, for anyone that wants to listen who's interested in contracting out agreements, let me just get this up because it actually is a really good episode.
Really good episode.
Here we go. Raising the Curve, episode 57, everything you need to know about prenups. So with that, essentially, it's your retirement savings are shared.
Yes.
So relationship property at its core, like in the most simple term, it's nothing to do with property or houses. It's your shared assets that are considered shared that would be split 50-50 if you separated. Yeah. So are you saying a lot of people don't contribute or only one does because they're like, well, we're both going to get access to it?
Yes. And that in some ways makes sense, but also from a female independence, having access to money as well as it's very different to be entitled to money and having access to money. And also then the woman is potentially missing out on the government contributions, employer contributions. So we were really reminded by these experts that we spoke to last year that everyone should ideally, if you can afford it, obviously not everyone's in the position to contribute, but if you can, get a KiwiSaver, make sure you're not missing out on any of the free money that's available to you.
But also a way to go about that could be if you think, okay, well, we don't have enough for both of us to be contributing because I'm not working and you are. Yeah. Totally valid, makes so much sense. Split the amount that you're investing between yours and his.
Exactly.
Just take the exact same contribution and put it between the two so that you've got it in your name.
Yeah, and there's heaps of funds, right, that you can mimic KiwiSaver, but it just runs separately.
True.
So you could you could literally have matching funds if you wanted.
That's quite a good idea. I love that.
Yeah, so it's pretty sad in terms of not seeing any progress in that space, but hopefully, we can all kind of continue to advocate for education around it and that women will continue to champion it.
Can I just say, Rachel, I think you have absolutely nailed this.
Oh,
No, seriously.
I don't know about that.
No, seriously. You have clearly done so much research and are so clued up.
It was really nice to use my brain for something other than like making sure I'd nailed nap time. You know?
No, honestly, I've loved this. So thank you so much for being on the pod.
No, thanks so much for having me. It's been awesome. And
It's been so
I hope I haven't come
good.
across like a total creep in terms of my fandom of the curve, but I just like have so much admiration for what I reckon you guys are doing, and
thank
like
you.
the exponential knowledge sharing that's happening is super cool.
Oh, thank you. That actually really means a lot. And yeah, loved having you. So, you're hired for next week. So we'll see you again next week.
Yay.
Maybe we do Friday. Anyway, we can sort the admin offline.
Sounds good. Yeah, totally.
But yeah, thank you so much to everyone else who did get in touch to try and be the fill-in for Vic. I think we're going to do this more just because it's really fun to give other people the opportunity to be on the podcast. And also, it's really good for Vic and I to be able to have a holiday.
Yeah, you deserve it.
Yeah, we really do. So thank you for listening. And yeah, we'll be back next week with Rachel.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thank you so much for listening to The Curve Weekly. Make sure you hit the subscribe button to stay up to date with all the money, biz and stock market news. And if you like what you heard, we would love a review. Thank you.
Yes, we would love a review. But if you did hate it, please, don't leave one if you hate it. No, but in all seriousness, could you please leave a review? Because it really helps other people find our cute little podcast.
And we hope you have a good week and see you next Monday.
Bye.
Bye. Sweet. Yeah. See you next Tuesday. Lol. See you next Tuesday. I mean Monday.
No, actually, though. New episodes out every Tuesday. Okay, quickly. The Curve was created to empower and educate you about investing, but we are not financial advisors.
Our platform exists for educational purposes only, and it doesn't provide personalised investing advice for your individual needs and should not be relied upon to make an investment or financial decision.
And always remember to do your own research before making any investment or financial decision.
We're here for any knowledge and support you need, but the final call is always yours.
And thanks for being here.
You got this.
Yeah, we know you got this.